Our long journey has led us here. We've talked about many aspects of how relationships are experienced for ourselves. We talked about culture, we talked about emotions, we talked about gender, but it all comes down to that interpersonal aspect, those important relationships that we encounter every day. Let's start with romance. What we want to talk about with romance is we want to define what a romantic relationship is. We want to talk about attraction. We want to talk about Knapp's theory. We want to talk about maintaining those relationships and the choices we have in those relationships. I'm going to try to keep both of these videos down to around 10 minutes so I don't drive you crazy, but this is a huge thing to talk about, as is all these final chapters. Defining a romantic relationship. What is the difference between liking someone and loving them? When you like someone, you love the good in them. But when you love someone, you also embrace the bad in them. In other words, when we love someone, we get the whole package. It's not just when they're good days, but it's their bad days. So love has a lot more of embracing the entire individual. We did talk earlier about liking versus loving. Liking is a feeling of affection and respect that we typically have for our friends. True, we should like our friends. We hear of frenemies, but overall, people who we allow into our sphere of influence, into that inner circle, into our more intimate of space, we like them. But can you love your friends as well? Yes, I think you can. Except for not necessarily in the romantic aspect of it. But it all depends on how you define love and if you want to draw that line between liking a friend and loving them. But you also have to draw the line between friendship and romance. Loving is vastly deeper and more intense emotional, and it has three components. Those components are intimacy, and that is you're letting them into that space. You're being vulnerable with them, and you're letting your guard down. You're taking off the mask, you're revealing what's behind the face, and you're showing your authentic self. Caring. We care for the people we love. Friends, sometimes they can come and go, but when we love someone, we miss them when they're not there. And in a more deeper and important way, when they're no longer in that sphere of influence, we no longer have that connection, and so it leaves a hole there. And we have an attachment to them. You know, we want to be around them. We want to share with them. We want to be vulnerable with them. We want them to be vulnerable with us. That is all part of a romantic relationship. Now we're going to go into several different models in the next couple slides here. This is the first one. As you look at this triangle, it's a common one that we see where we're trying to balance intimacy, commitment, and passion. And depending on how we balance that in a relationship, gives us the type of love that we're experiencing or type of romance that we're experiencing with others. We can have compassionate love with intimacy and commitment. And in other words, we're vulnerable with the person, but we may not be physical with the person in the intimacy type of physical. The fictitious love, we have passion and commitment, but we really don't have the vulnerability. We're not showing them our authentic self. We're still keeping that somewhat guarded. The romantic love is intimacy and passion. So we're being vulnerable with the person. We're being passionate with the person, but we don't really have that commitment yet in there. And then, of course, everyone kind of goes for that center ground, the consummate love, where we're having equality amongst all three. We get that perfect triangle approach. Now, intimacy is an internal, and it's often what lies beneath the surface that makes us all different. It's the authentic self. It's letting people see that. Intimacy deepens through vulnerability. It begins with curiosity, and through that, knowing of our own internal landscape. So romance does clear back to chapter 2 when we were talking about self-reflection. Because if we don't know ourselves, it's hard to be intimate with others because we're still exploring our own emotions. And so we don't really have that inner self to share. So self-reflection is an important part of that. Passion. Now, passion is one of those things that when we looked at the difference between an emotion and a mood, or a feeling, let me go with feeling and a mood. Feelings, let's remember that was defined as something short and very impactful for us. Meanwhile, a mood is less intense and kind of passes quickly. Now, passion is absolutely a feeling because it burns fast and it burns hot and it's scary and exciting. So there's fear elements mixed in with the elements of attraction. And so it's strong and barely controllable emotion or feeling. And it's something that we oftentimes find different aspects of a relationship. It normally is there in the early portion. It might come back in different areas. We always are trying to rekindle it in relationships. Bring that passion back, as they say. The final aspect of that triangle we want to look at is commitment. Now, commitment is a long-term dedication to each other. I enjoy this picture because it does show two people that are elderly. And we get from it that commitment is not just that rapid passion. It's not just that feeling. Commitment is more of a mood that continues on, and we, in commitment, stay with each other and we support each other through the long haul. Even when the passion kind of fades away, we try to rekindle it, or we remain committed to helping each other, we remain committed to being vulnerable and sharing our thoughts with each other. So that draws out our triangle so that you can see each aspect of it. What I'm going to do is there's another video that takes what I've just explained and places it into circles. And I'm going to put that over in our TED Talk area, our Think and Respond, so you can watch it there, where instead of just going into the triangle, she breaks it down into 8 different levels, 8 different kinds of love that includes like, as we talked about, and includes the different types of love that we spoke about. I wanted to go ahead and share that at that point because I can't embed it in this part of the video. So let's move on to the next slide and then you can go check it out. So here's that slide before you head over and take a look at the Think and Respond. Now, there's another way people kind of categorize love that you may encounter, especially online. This is kind of a pop culture thing that people love running to and saying, oh, I have Eros love, or we have AGAP love that we share. Just so you know that what those terms are and what each of them is referring to, they're kind of along the same lines as the triangle. They're just worded a bit differently. Like Eros love is focused on the beauty and the sexuality of the relationship. Ludus love, entertainment and exciting. Storge love, peaceful and slow. Pragma love, practical and traditional. Mania is like it sounds, it's crazy. It's elation and depression, it's just a roller coaster. And then the gold standard we're all supposed to be trying to reach is that AGAP love, where we're compassionate and selfless. And that goes into that center of the triangle where we're talking about having equal passion and intimacy mixed in finally with commitment. Now, what do you think about these different categories? Not just this one, but the triangle. Is it a good idea to categorize love? Because what happens if our love or our romance falls outside of one of those categories? Do we somehow lessen it? Or what about if it's a blend? What about if it doesn't remain stagnant? What about if it's dynamic and it changes? Let me know your thoughts down below from this first section. You know, does love change? Is there periods that we go through? Does it mature? Let me know what you think.